are heating up in Ukraine, but not with the Russians, but with the Hungarians, actually. They are not happy. Okay, hello everybody. I'm your boss, GeoBoss, and welcome to another weekly raid plan stream. Man, usually I've planned to do weekly streams, and this last week it's just been streams every single day. There's been so much news every single day to cover. Oh man. It's a lot. It's a lot. Also, there's a hell of a lot of misinformation, so I'm having to spend a ton of extra time just doing the little bit of effort you need to verify information. Because there's a lot of stuff that's fake, like some of those fighter jet videos that came out during the first 48 hours of the Operation Epic Fury starting. Those were arma clips from a war simulation game. Pretty nuts. Oh man, let's see here. Okay, I got even more stuff. There's a lot of breaking news, man. So much stuff here. I can hardly keep up. Shit, where does this go? Where does this go? There. That's where it goes. Okay. Okay. We're gonna get into the charts now. We're gonna get into the charts now. I just need to let's open the first link here. Okay, so we're gonna start off with oil. I'm going to switch to the screen cap. Markets are now closed on the FX side. Wow. Look at that. $91. Holy smokes. Guys, that is kind of insane. That's kind of insane. And that happened because Kuwait shut off some of their production. And then head of state out of Qatar came out and said, oh, we can really see things shut down at a really significant level here if we don't have things opened in 2 to 3 weeks, which was the time frame we already had set for our expectations. So nothing terribly new on that front. It's just, it's being said with a lot more urgency. All these clips are from world leaders, and they're moving markets off their concern. Let's see here. Okay. Julio. So everyone for this stream is able to hop into the events stage. And then let's see here, speak on the stage. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So if you're in the Discord, you can come to the event stage, raise your hand, say hi, and if you want, ask some questions. Otherwise, I'm going to keep my eye on the chats in both rooms for the stream, because we're just going to be going over some information here and then getting right to it. So the reason why Qatar is coming out and saying, we have about 2 to 3 weeks before shit really hits the fan, and we're at oil capacity, we have all of our storage containers filled, is because of this chart here. And we can zoom in. Mid-East oil producers against the clock. Hormuz halt may exhaust oil and fuel shortage in weeks or days. And this was This is within 48 hours, I think. Let's see here. When was this made? March 5th. I think this chart though is a day older. So all of these reports, all of these numbers are reported for effectively, I think, March 3rd. So a lot of these groups have about a week. Now, Kuwait went ahead and shut stuff off right now because they're on, like, things need to start normalizing effectively next week for things to go fine for Kuwait and the UAE. Now, if they have some rerouting going on, it's fine. Qatar, they're already shutting stuff off. The Saudis are holding out right now. Saudis are holding out right now. Iraq is already in the ship. Iraq is already not doing so hot right now. They're already having to wind down production, I expect. Now, if things start normalizing as far as access through the Strait of Hormuz next week, which we're going to be going over a couple of things, which makes me think that's likely based off expectations that a lot of market participants have, and a couple of bits of information. We'll be looking at that information today to help assess this risk going into next week. So right off the bat, let's see here. Yeah, we have a bunch of institutions that are repeating, hey, we have this 2-week buffer time frame, and that's when they expect this, at least economic crisis, to be over by. Otherwise, this, what is it? The guy in charge of Qatar, I forget the name of his position, but he effectively came out and said, yeah, oil's going to probably 150 if shit isn't fixed, if we can't go through the strait by effectively the end of next week. So here's one of the institutions, Finch, on Middle East aviation disruption. A baseline expectations that Middle East conflict will last less than a month. BlackRock, they are coming out and explicitly saying down here that they expect it to last 10 to 14 day buffer for how energy markets could handle disruptions. So they're in line there with us. Merrill has a bit of equities analysis where they go and they look at prior geopolitical shocks. And we can go ahead and read the full issue here. And you can see this major geopolitical events and subsequent S&P 500 price returns. What they're doing is they're saying in the aftershocks from war in the Middle East will dictate price movements for multi-assets in the near term. The duration of the conflict and how broad are key factors to monitor per the accompanying table. Geopolitical events are headline grabbing but not market moving over the medium term. We continue to emphasize the highest level of diversification in portfolios. And so you can see major geopolitical events and subsequent S&P 500 price returns for 1 day, 1 month, 1 quarter, 6 months, and a year out. These are the different events that are being compared. These are the dates that they happened, and then these are the walk forward returns. And you can see even for the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Israel-Hamas war, and the 12-day war, I mean, the worst one on this list, the worst one-day return on this list is 9/11 and Brexit. Those are the worst 1 days. And in this column of things are still negative 1 month out was the Audi oil embargo. the Arab oil embargo, and the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Those were the only two events in, I don't know, since effectively for the last 60 years, close to 70 years, where equity returns were still negative a month out. Oh, and I almost was like, oh, and the Fukushima disaster, but that had a positive return 1 month out and then went back to negative. But these were other factors than just the Fukushima disaster. And then the Russia-Ukraine conflict also had negative moves over here. But if you look across the board here, the averages are clear. About a month out from most geopolitical events, you're up. About a quarter out from most geopolitical events, you're up. About a half a year out from most geopolitical events, you're up. Same with a year out. All right. And then this is a clip from what's going on with shipping.
Around 75.
Greek ship owners are fixing new contracts for ships to go through the Persian Gulf. And this is time-stamped here, so we're just going to listen for a sec.
Dollars. That is going to cascade throughout the entire industry. I mean, every tanker is going to become more expensive because you're going to have to keep them in the trade you want and not pull them over to the other trade. Just to be clear, we are already seeing that Greek ship owners in particularly are fixing contracts for ships to sail through the Persian Gulf. They're already being done that. Contracts are being made. So even though we don't see ships sailing through, we are getting fixtures saying that this ship is going to go to this port, load, and come back out. And the cost for those fixtures are unbelievable. I mean, we're talking about a run from Fujairah outside the Persian Gulf into the Persian Gulf and back out for several $1 million. I mean, that is unheard of numbers we're talking about.
So that's it. That's the whole clip. So people are willing to pay out the nose for this right now. And let's move on. One of the things that broke yesterday after the stream, but is now kind of all over the place. The U.S. is temporarily removing Russian sanctions for LNG exports to India. And we can zoom in here a little bit. Sale, delivery, or offloading of crude oil or petroleum products of Russian Federation origin loaded on any vessel, including vessels blocked under the above listed authorities. And these are all the different Russian sanctions that the United States, that the U.S. Treasury put on Russia. On or before 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, March 5th, 2026, are authorized from that date until 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, April 4th. So for the next month, the tariffs on Russia exporting oil to India are effectively halted just for the next month, because we don't want huge economic spikes. We don't want huge spikes. And this is some of the news I had just got as I was starting the stream.
By a little bit.
We have implemented short-term measures to help keep oil prices down, says Secretary of Energy Chris Wright. We are allowing our friends in India to take oil that is ready already on ships, refine it, and move those barrels into the market quickly and practically. A practical way to get supply flowing and ease
Bird,
pressure.
that you may have some news to break today, and so I just want to give you that opportunity to say that if that's
Yeah, so back to your question about oil. We need to get oil on the market in the short term. In the long term, supplies are abundant. There's no worries there. But as oil gets bid up a little bit because of those constraints coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, we're taking a short-term action to say all this floating Russian oil storage that's around southern Asia, it's China just backed up. China does not treat their suppliers well. So there's a bunch of floating barrels just sitting there. We've reached out to our friends in India and said, buy that oil, bring it into your refineries. That pulls stored oil immediately into Indian refineries and releases the pressure on other refineries around the world to buy oil that they're no longer competing with the Indians for in that marketplace.
Yeah,
So we have
but
a-
you know what? The Ukrainians are probably pissed right now. Because this is effectively going to hand money to the Russians, and these sanctions were put in place to prevent the Russians from getting paid for their oil in order to fund their war efforts against Ukraine. So the United States is looking at this as, hey, we don't want there to be a global energy crisis that would systemically hurt the global economy, not just Ukraine here. So we're going to lift these sanctions in the short term for countries like India, so that then they can stay afloat. Because if they can't get this oil at all, if they have no oil here, they're going to have a really hard time for themselves, and that will make some hard times for other countries who rely on India here.
Number of measures like that are short-term and temporary. This is no change in policy towards Russia. This is a very brief change in policy just to keep oil prices down a little bit better than we could otherwise.
We'll see how Trump responds, because some pundit, some reporter is going to ask Trump, why are you removing tariffs on Russian oil? And then Trump's going to have to step in and defend Chris here on exactly what's going on. And then we have Canadian opposition leader Pierre Poilievre asks the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, to implement an emergency energy supply plan. And this is his letter. It's 3 pages long. But he also posted a video in Germany talking about it. He was in the port, some facility in Germany.
Is in an energy scramble, and I'm at the hub of that scramble here in Germany. I'm in Hamburg, which is the biggest port in the country and the 3rd biggest in the European continent. Behind me is the infrastructure to import oil from around the world. This is the place where the storage tanks and the fuel depots take the oil and distribute it right across Germany. But of course, all of Europe is in a panic right now because the Middle Eastern war has actually interrupted the supply of energy that powers Europe. Europe, for example, is buying natural gas from Qatar. Qatar supplies 20% of the world's LNG. It's been hit by the Iranians, and its production is ground to a halt. The Strait of Hormuz, which moves 20% of the world's oil, as you can see from this diagram, has actually seen its traffic grind to a halt due to threats from the Iranian regime to hit those tankers. Canada can be the solution to this, and the price is right. Oil prices are up 20%. In Europe, gas prices are up 50%. We should be taking advantage of the high price in order to provide paychecks for our people while we fuel the freedom of our friends. And that is why I'm calling today for Canada to enact an emergency energy production plan to immediately unlock our potential to supply the world with reliable, ethical, and democratically produced energy sources, including oil and gas. We could be supplying the gas to this region. For example,
In Germany,
Gas in Canada is trading at about $1.80 per million metric British thermal units. It's $15 over here, almost 10 times higher. We
Canada
could
can make a lot of
quadruple our
money.
price and still give massive discounts to our European friends, lowering their costs and increasing our paychecks and production. But to do that, we need to unblock our resource sector. The emergency energy production plan that I'm proposing would repeal the anti-development law C-69. It would repeal C-48, the ban on shipping off the west coast of BC. It would get rid of the industrial carbon tax and move towards 6 months permits so we can turn our projects around quickly. It would use the constitutionally entrenched powers of the federal government to get permits granted, and it would pre-permit zones for LNG liquefaction plants so that industry could come using private money, knowing they already have a permit, to liquefy that gas, put it on a ship, send it over here to Europe, where we can turn dollars to dictators and into paychecks for our people. My friends, we have an incredible advantage over the Americans with shorter shipping distance and colder weather to liquefy that gas. We have the brilliant workers and the trillions of dollars of investment.
Yeah, he really wants to get oil and nat gas in Canada to be a lot easier to work with. You know, I still do think that, you know, it was wrong for Trump maybe to make an enemy out of Poilievre. Not necessarily an enemy, but Trump didn't help Poilievre. Says, you know, I'd rather work with Carney. And now look at what Carney is doing. It's like, you know, Poilievre just didn't like Trump saying we're gonna make you the 51st state of the United States. And so Poilievre's a Canadian nationalist. He's going to go and say, we don't like that. And he's going to clap back at Trump. And then Trump just said, well, then I guess your opponent seems to be kissing my ass and being nice. I guess I'll trust Carney here. But Carney is a fucking globalist. Like, to the nth degree. And now he's doing stuff Trump really, really, really doesn't like. He would have done, you know, I know Trump probably, you know, he says, oh, I wouldn't have gotten along with Poilievre. Poilievre was clearly the better option in that option. And Canada would probably be much better off, and the world's oil supply would be a lot more secure if Poilievre was in charge of Canada right now, instead of fucking Carney going to India and going and doing this fucking Obama tour, right? That's what Carney's fucking doing. He's doing a fucking Obama tour, right? He's going around to all these places saying, oh, what great allies we are, and da-da-da-da-da. We're gonna be the new middle nations. We have to stand up to China and the United States, all the middle nations, South Korea, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, all the middle fledgling countries that aren't really great, huge superpowers that are part of the Western nations. We must all unite. And I was like, well, unite under who? You mean the person who's providing you your fucking nuclear umbrella, you dipshit? Right? But in all seriousness, as far as, like, for example, Australia goes, they need their damn nuclear sub. They've been waiting on that shit for far too long. We need to help out our Aussie bros, man. We need to get them that nuke sub. But yeah, Carney is just asinine. He's effectively the Obama of, I mean, Trudeau is in his own class. Trudeau is in his own fucking class. A lot of people would call Trudeau the Obama of Canada, but Carney at least has like this Bangor veil over him. He's truly a globalist. Yeah. If you can tell, I probably don't like Carney, and I probably like Poilievre more. If you couldn't tell, I don't bother to hide my political biases. You know, it's one thing when someone is trying to come across as neutral, and then every now and again they just seep like a poison. They just kind of seep their bias into their commentary, and they try and come off as neutral. They're like, oh, I'm, trying to provide bias-free news of all these things going on in the world, or bias-free analysis, da-da-da-da-da. And then some big event will happen, and it'll just seep through. Their personal opinions will just come through. And it's just better to be honest, in my opinion. Like, sure, report the news as is, but I feel more comfortable, and I also feel personally more comfortable when doing videos and whatnot, being open about what I believe and where my allegiances are. So then people just know where I stand, and I know where people stand, because I actually get more engaged. I'm like, oh, I know this person has this point of view. I want to go out of my way to listen to this person and what they have to say, even if I disagree with them, because I need to understand what people of this particular point of view are currently thinking right now and responding to this global event. And so when people try and hide their analysis under this veil of neutrality, right? Especially a lot of news agencies, every news agency has huge bias, right? You can go online and Google, CNN or Fox or France 24, like the BBC. You go to any place, Google any place in the world, any news organization in the world, and you can say, what's their bias? And you'll get an answer. So it's not like there's any truly neutral news agency out there. Everyone has some belief. Everyone, therefore, has some kind of political belief. And it's best to know up front what that is, so that then when they do espouse, or even when I espouse, for example, things that I believe that you might disagree with, that you can filter that and be like, okay, I like this analysis from so-and-so here, but I disagree with this particular belief or whatever. But I'm, there's a lot of people I really disagree with, but I have to listen to because they have really powerful voices. A lot of people follow them. They report on news, or they give points of views of what a lot of people think. So it's that's why I'm not afraid of, like, for example, going over what I thought about Carney there, for example, right? It's a lot easier to trust people when you know what their bias is in the first place. Man, imagine how much lower oil would be right now. It would probably not have even jumped this high today if Canada had Poilievre and they were already allowing a bunch more oil to be produced. It's kind of sad for Canada. It's kind of sad. They will actually end up the 51st state if Canada doesn't succeed economically. So, I mean, that can happen, but I personally, I'm joking there, of course, but I want to see Canada do well and do fine. I got family in Canada, so I like to see Canada do well, but I'd like to see it become, less of. I want there to be less foreign interference in America's top hat. Okay, less foreign interference from the Chinese and India and Pakistan. Just get the fuck out. Leave Canada to the Canadians. And then we'll see about the separatist groups in Alberta and Quebec. We'll see how those guys do. We actually have threads in Discord following those separatist groups because they are still pissed, man. Let's go ahead. Mexico's economic secretary announced that the U.S. and Mexico will hold bilateral trade negotiations on March 16th. So this is a USMCA related thing. And if I can, what I'll do is click on this. Oh, I got to copy that. Go. So what he said is a first bilateral round of conversations that are now formally established between the United States and Mexico are going to occur on March 16th with an eye toward the review of free trade of the free trade agreement between Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And see, here's one thing that actually can be quite confusing when you're looking at research and all of these politicians and diplomats and foreign affairs related people discussing this trade deal, this trilateral trade deal. The Americans call it the USMCA. The Canadians call it the the CUM, or yeah, the CUSM. No. What do they fucking call it? The CUMSA? They call it cum something. It's not cool. Yeah, I forget what the Canadians call it. And then the Mexicans look how they're putting Mexico first. So they call it the MUSA or the MUSCA. Oh my god. I feel like I'm having an aneurysm. Essentially, each country likes to put their acronym first, the acronym of their country first in the acronym. So it's like, I can't just do one search for USMCA. I have to do 3 terms. I have to search it 3 different ways for the 3 different political groups that are talking about the exact same thing. They don't make it easy. Anyways, this was a reply to this guy who's doing a bad faith post saying, this guy's got a big account. He's got like 100,000 followers. And he's saying, hey, what the economic secretary of Mexico actually said is that they're going to undercut the Canadians. The Mexicans and the United States, they're actually going to get together and go their own way. They're going to kick the Canadians out of the economic agreement. And that's literally not what the dude said. Like, this is the quote. This is literally not what the dude said. It's like, not it. And same thing with what's going on with the war right now. There's so many fucking guys. It's just like, why are you wasting my time with this? Shilling. Why are you trying to look 2.6 thousand likes? Now, it's not like this is something new or groundbreaking or like crazy, but it's like, dude, this is kind of a benign, kind of somewhat boring geopolitical meeting in preparation for a larger geopolitical meeting. And this guy is trying to foment bullshit. However, then when you check his bio, he says documenting the decline of the West. So I think we understand what this guy's bias is, right? Now that we've talked about biases, this guy's probably anti-Western and he's got a Canadian flag in America. You know what? I'll give the benefit of the doubt that this guy's account's probably based in Canada or the United States. But really quick here. About this account, based in Canada. Good. But it's still kind of fucking weird that he's talking about that. Decline of the West. It's a very black pill doomer thing, and I get the ick when I see black pill doomer shit. I got the ick for that shit like since 2015. And that was, and I'm talking about 2015, 2014, before Trump announced he was running. I was like, okay, this is. I have stories, but I'm not going to tell them on the stream. I have stories, people really were dooming out even a decade ago about the fall of the West and all this shit. And I'm just looking at them and I'm like, you can easily like disprove this stuff in like 5 seconds of a Google search. It's not hard to do that you're being propagandized to. And you have to understand, purpose of propaganda is to demoralize you. Don't forget, class. Propaganda is to demoralize you. You may know that they're trying to propagandize you. You may know that they're lying. You know that they know that you know you're lying. But that's the point. It's not to get you to intellectually change your mind, because they have such persuasive arguments. It's to demoralize. It's to make you not want to put in the effort, because so what? We've already lost. Oh no. That's a black pill. Do not fall for that. And if you care about your country, don't fall for that crap. Never fall for that crap. Okay, so now we're gonna get into some Epic Fury updates. We'll be getting into trade plans, don't worry. Trump wants unconditional surrender from Iran. We will have a great future, make Iran great again. There will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. Okay. And then there are some anti-regime militia groups coming out. There's a handful of these groups coming around. But in the same vein, there are also pro-regime militia groups coming out. And here's one video of them. So that's one, and then there's a different group actually in the same place. Balochistan. This might be the same group. So yeah. Where is Balochistan? Because that's where these people are. So real quick, we had a map the other day, and this is that map. And if we scroll down, so if we look at the legend here, it says Balochi. So this is probably where Balochistan is. Again, I have no frame of reference for this stuff at the moment. But I'm learning as quickly as I can about all of these different subgroups. We were just actually learning about these guys, everyone who speaks Arabic here in the Gulf. And then the Kurds, figuring out the Kurds are still going, and then the Azerbaijanis coming in from the north here. Then you have Pakistan building up a huge military buildup on their border with Iran. So there's a few things going on here. The Pakistanis actually might be going to war with the Balochi. That would be with Balochistan. Yeah. So, Balochistan might be the people who inhabit that area in the bottom right are probably going to be the targets of Pakistan. If Pakistan ends up going into Iran with the Kurds and with the Azerbaijani, that, it's going to really freak out people in Iran when they see all of these groups coming into their country for their own personal gain, frankly. It really makes me think that there's a serious, significant risk of balkanization and some kind of civil war in Iran. Like, those risks are still really high up there. I even saw a report. I was reading the outlooks, some of the outlooks this week. I still have more to go through. And there was one institution, SEB, that actually explicitly pointed that out as a risk. And it was the only institution that I've read so far. Out of all the banks, all the geopolitical analysts, out of everything, I haven't seen any other group bring up the words civil war other than literally myself and this group SEB. I have not seen it mentioned in any other analysis. And it makes me go like, wouldn't it be obvious if you have all these protesters who somehow get armed by the US, and then you have these other groups coming in from outside of Iran, that Iranian nationalists would try and fight these people? Like, it seems like Iran is setting itself up for a lot more conflict. A lot more conflict. The United States, for all intents and purposes, is effectively in and out. They did the big job, and now it's a matter of, okay, we'll provide you air defense and weapons. Go take care of the rest of the Iranian missile installations, and go ahead and get rid of everyone who's on the ground who's still aligned to the Islamic Republic force. I don't know what the trade is going to be. I legitimately don't know. This is not going to be so straightforward. Now, will the oil continue to flow? Very, very likely, but in the scenario Iran falls into effectively a civil war, or a war for setting up the Balkanized, or the different splinter groups that could happen here, or like, oh, one group over in the West says we're going to establish our own independent country, and then another group in the East says we're going to also go and splint off from Iran and establish our own independent country, and then you end up with Iran getting cut into a bunch of different pieces. Now, the United States and a bunch of Western countries have already said that they explicitly do not want that happening to Iran, that they want Iran to maintain its territorial integrity. But if you end up with many years of effectively civil war, that could end up being an outcome. Right now, we really don't know what's going to end up happening. We don't know if this civil war scenario is going to happen. We don't know if balkanization is going to happen. We don't know if everyone in Iran is going to stay together as one big happy nation and sing Kumbaya after the Islamic Republic actually is gone. We don't know even really if the Shah is actually going to come in and run the transitory government. There are still so many significant unknowns about Iran. It's disingenuous to say, for anyone to actually say that they know what's going to happen next. So it's important to look at all the different potential scenarios and to plan out those scenarios as thoroughly and do as much game theory on those scenarios as you can possibly, out as far as you can reasonably. And then watch as developments continue so you can update those scenarios and update your expectations of which scenario is most likely to occur going forward. Okay. I just had to do something with the notes. All right, so okay, this is nice. We're gonna be able to take a little breather here. Iran put $1 million bounty on Trump and Netanyahu. And it's not translated. The audio isn't translated. But this is kind of funny. $1 million bounty. And this guy, I scrolled down because I'm like, this looks old. And the very first comment is, this looks old. And the rationale is, hey, this isn't old because there's a bunch of flags in the background and banners for the martyrdom Khomeini. And it's just low resolution because it had to be compressed a lot in order to send it out over the really slow internet that they have, apparently. That's why it looks like crap. And then, oh, this was hilarious to find. I genuinely don't know if this is true or not. But this was really funny to hear, and it gave me a good laugh. So I'm going to play this too.
Latino women. So I spoke to one of my sources this morning. He was telling me that, look, once upon a time, the Iranian sleeper cell thing was real. Well, they got jobs, they got integrated into communities, and then they started, losing the radicalism. They started loving our country. They started really loving being an American. But something very specific caught their eye. And according to my friend, one of the greatest factors for why the Iranians decided to depart their mission was they discovered Latino women.
Protect big booty Latinas!
Big booty Latinas.
Big booty Latinas.
The Iranians said, I'd much rather die for that.
No, not die at all, and get me some big booty Latina instead of doing a suicide mission and dying.
I watched
So they're in Miami.
I think
Yes.
yesterday,
So
but
the
this is
Iranian
funny.
sleeper cells were real. They were here. So they rounded up the radicals, right? That's the part of the story that you need to. They were ended up catching the radicals, but the ones who didn't radicalize, it was because they got some Latina booty.
They got
It's a rumor, right? It's someone's source of a source, probably, but I thought it was funny to hear. It put a smile on my face. Okay, current Iranian munition spend. So, this is currently where the whole missile situation is. Right now, there's less than 10 missiles, ballistic missiles, and 0 cruise missiles being launched, pretty much. The main issue seems to be drones, right? They're sending about 120, 140 drones out each day so far. Let's see. Iran conducted numerous drone attacks and some ballistic missile attacks targeting Arab Gulf countries on March 5th. Iranian drone attacks appear to primarily target the United Arab Emirates. Iranian drone and ballistic missile attacks on Gulf energy infrastructure have continued to disrupt the regional energy industry. So this is still not good. Until that drone number finally drops, I don't know, below 100, below 80, below 50. If you want to know any indicator to follow right now, the indicator to follow is how many drones is Iran launching. And the lower this number is, the closer to stabilization we will have in actually getting ships to load oil and natural gas and take it the hell out where it needs to go. Now, there's another munitions list here. Iran missile launches during the first 8 days went from 350 down to 15. And then drone swarms went from about 300 to 12. This is a totally different number. Totally different number. Totally conflicting number. And I have no clue which one's real, but if any of them I'm going to trust, I'm not going to trust World_Insights 1. I'm going to trust the Institute for the Study of War. Right? This is an actual legit organization. This is a bunch of guys, I think, doing Twitter content. I'm going to trust the Geopolitical Research Group and their numbers. So if the missiles are gone, the strait will reopen very likely next week. Drones can still do a lot of damage, but definitely not as much as the missiles, unless you have a shitload of drones. And we know Iran is sending less and less, likely to send less and less drones now, too. So that's what I look forward to, but that less and less number hasn't really shown up in the last 3 days here. And it really ramped up March 1st, and it really went back down, but we need to see the drone number drop below 100 and then plummet to 0. It'd just be great if it went straight to 0. One thing that caught my eye while looking at this, I got recommended this, which is it's a company making interceptor drones to destroy other drones, like the Shahed type drones posted. And so this is the company showing their interceptor drones intercepting all these kamikaze drones. So these are the same kind of drones that are, you just fly into a building and they blow up. So yeah, this is just one piece of footage after the next of this group's drones blowing up the suicide drones. They just fly the drone right into the engine of the Shahed. So this company's about to make a lot of money. That company's about to get a lot of money. And 2 oil tank. Now, the reason why this is still such a huge deal, apparently 2 oil tanks in the UAE were blown up yesterday. You can see here in the very, very bottom right. This is not great. That's very bad. It looks like 3 have been hit. This one likely blew up, and then these 2 are just currently on fire. And it seems like these guys are watering these nearby tanks to stop if the fire tries to land or something spreads that's flammable, to keep it from igniting. Yeah, you can see all the emergency vehicles here. Yeah, it's a huge, huge, huge deal. And then sonar is annotating everything. It's very, very cool. Sora software, very, very cool stuff. And now we have some stuff about the Ukraine oil blockade. This is not great. The Hungarian Minister of Foreign Affairs made a post on a Ukrainian blockade. And we went over this yesterday. Essentially, Orban wants the friendship pipeline to reopen so then they can move oil into Europe. But Ukraine, Zelensky, doesn't want the oil to move through the pipeline because he thinks it's going to end up benefiting the Russians. Brussels is cooperating with Croatia to block Russian oil deliveries to Hungary and Slovakia by sea, despite the EU decision allowing this when pipeline transport is not available. So that's what's going on right now. The EU Commission did not stand up for Hungary and Slovakia. Instead, it claims our countries face no supply difficulties and is defending Ukraine rather than supporting 2 member states. So this is what's going on right now. Personally, I don't have a dog in this race. I don't know, like, what's the quote-unquote right side here. But let's see here. Ukrainians say that the Hungarians are linked to the Russians, so they don't want to give them oil. And this is the Ukrainian banking officials are briefed, briefing EU and US ambassadors on the Hungarian incident right now. The Hungarians are trying to force the pipeline to open somehow. He sees Russian handwriting in it, linking Hungarian officials' Moscow trips to a chain of provocations. Right now, a meeting is taking place at the Ministry of Affairs with ambassadors of the European Union and the United States of America, where representatives of our banking system will provide detailed information regarding this case. We have been closely following and continuing statements from the Hungarian leadership. We saw hints a few days before this incident that some provocation was being prepared, and indeed this is like a confession of omission, crime scene. So we also see a Russian hand in this. So the Hungarians want the pipeline open. They are, from what I understand, they're putting their military on the pipeline to make sure that the pipeline isn't hurt, and I don't know what else to open it somehow. Apparently open it somehow. And the Ukrainians don't want to do it, and they're also saying, hey, you guys are in cahoots with the Russians, and you're going to help the Russians if we do this. Which, again, think about what just happened with the United States lifting sanctions temporarily for a month between Russia and India, and how that must make everyone in this situation feel right now, because now the Indians are getting all this oil from the Russians for at least the next month to help with their oil capacity limitations. And here the Hungarians are like, hey, we want to send this oil to Europe. Let us send it to Europe. And the EU is effectively saying no, and the Ukrainians are saying no. That is my surface level of understanding. And if I'm wrong on any of this, I am absolutely open to getting more information on this. That seems to be where this is at right now. Again, the Ukrainians are probably like, they're looking at that Russia-India deal, and they're like, shit. And then they're like, well, at least we could stop this, right? But again, from what I understand, the Hungarians are trying to send their oil to Europe, not to Russia. So I'm not entirely sure. Just because the Hungarians have had meetings with the Russians, that somehow means that the Hungarians are somehow going to be sending oil to the Russians. I mean, the Russians have plenty of oil. I feel like I'm missing some information here. I feel like I'm missing some context. And in Hungary, Trump actually just has been endorsing the leader,
Minister Orban.
Orban is actually up for election, and Zelensky actually came out the other day and said, Orban just wants the oil to flow to help in his election. And then here's Trump saying, well, I actually endorse Orban. We should keep Orban in power. He's doing an unbelievable job. So now Zelensky is, the Trump administration is already at odds with Zelensky in the most recent 24 hours in the United States, allowing India to import sanctioned oil from Russia and to pay the Russians for it. And now Zelensky is on the flip side right now, also doing something with getting very combative personally with Orban, saying you just want the oil to get reelected. And Trump likes Orban. Man, it would be great to have more commentary on this, to have someone in the community who's been following this probably for longer, because I'm going to stay as closely informed as I can about this to the best of my ability that I can get through X, but I'll make sure over the weekend to do a little bit of extra research on this specifically to kind of see how far back this goes, because usually when you're getting into these geopolitical headbutt situations, because right now this is not necessarily a conflict, it's a headbutt. There's been like 5 or 6 headbutts between the countries before this one that can almost precede a conflict. So I got a little bit more research to look up here. Guys, I don't know everything in the world, okay? I want to learn as much as I can about what's going on in the world. And new things are always happening in the world, and things are constantly changing between people, which is why you have to do your best to stay up to date with as much of this stuff as possible. And when you don't know something, it's really important in these types of situations that you say you don't know all the context, or you feel like you're missing some information, or you want someone to help you get more information on this or that. It's explicitly bad in these types of scenarios when you try and act like you know more about the motivations and can perfectly describe the behavior of all the participants involved perfectly. And I'm probably at fault a couple of times in that front. You know, definitely people in the Islamic Republic would probably put me into that bucket for like, oh, you don't really understand us. And I'm like, well, I don't know. How long does it take to understand you guys? I think 47 years, things have kind of been a problem here. I've seen enough bad things to know I don't like you. I've seen enough bad things just over my lifetime to know I don't like you. So I think I'm on a safe base as regards to my stance on where I know and where I think I stand on that topic. But when it comes down to this, I'm not gonna place any bets here, right? But an escalation between Hungary and Ukraine, economically, not even militarily, but just economically, is a huge headache. So we'll see what comes of this next. One thing that I did find when I was going through looking for more information on this is apparently Ukraine has been caught smuggling some gold into Hungary, and this is political director for Viktor Orban. I believe this is his son or something. We demand answers from Ukraine leadership. Photos show the so-called Ukrainian gold convoy operation. And so there's been a bunch of gold confiscated from people traveling through Hungary toward Ukraine. What makes this even more alarming is that since January, more than $900 million, 420 million euro, and 146 kilograms of gold have reportedly been transported through Hungary to Ukraine. That's actually insane. So what is this money meant to finance? And if this money really is supposed to go to Ukraine, and then this is an actual video of the confiscation occurring. Apparently, there was someone from the Ukrainian military that was involved. Among those detained was a former Ukrainian intelligence general. Convoys of cash and gold escorted by intelligence-linked individuals raise serious questions. So, like, what the fuck is going on? Who's doing what here? What's this money for? Why are the Ukrainians blocking the oil, not just for other reasons, but for a stack of reasons? And this is one of the reasons, because the Hungarians are stopping these transports here. Like, dude, someone explain to me what this clusterfuck is all about. Yeah, I want to get into charts, but I actually have some crypto stuff. So if we go to Bitcoin, Bitcoin's been doing a-okay. It's been holding up. Although some of the analysts I follow, they're actually still on the bearish to choppy side. They think things are more likely to go sideways, a bit less likely to actually go even lower, and then much more likely to like go sky high. So a lot of these analysts are thinking we're effectively stuck between like 55,000 and 80,000 for all intents and purposes. That's where they think things are going. Now, this is one of the benefits of having all those emails in while you're doing research. Here we go. There were 3 central banks that released news regarding crypto policy, tokenization policy, all on the same day. 3 central banks released statements about tokenization yesterday. So here's the Federal Reserve. Agencies clarify the capital treatment of tokenized securities. Federal bank regulatory agencies today jointly issued answers to frequently asked questions to clarify the capital treatment of tokenized securities. A security is often referred to as tokenized when ownership rights in the security are represented using distributed ledger technology. The answers to the frequently asked questions clarify that an eligible tokenized security should generally receive the same capital treatment as the non-tokenized form of the security under the capital rule. The agencies also clarified that the capital rule is technology neutral, and the technologies used to issue and transact in a security do not generally impact its capital treatment. As with any exposure, banks holding tokenized securities must apply sound risk management practices and comply with applicable laws and regulations towards securities. And then you can click on the frequently asked questions. It takes you to this document here about the regulations, all regulations. And then these are the frequently asked questions. What is the capital treatment for eligible tokenized securities? Would a tokenized security qualify as financial collateral for purposes of the capital rule? And would the capital treatment of tokenized securities depend on the tokens are issued on permission or permissionless blockchains? No, the capital rule does not provide a different treatment based on the use of permission or permissionless blockchains. So the Fed, at least for the United States, is just saying, hey, if you have tokenized securities, all the laws and regulations for securities apply to the tokenized security. And then in Canada, they had this Project Samara, research paper. Project Samara was a limited real-world experiment designed to evaluate the use of distributed ledger technology and wholesale central bank digital money in Canadian capital markets. The project involved the issuance of a single tokenized bond by Export Development Canada to a closed investor group, with RBC Markets and TD Securities acting as joint lead managers. Settlement was conducted in central bank money issued by the Bank of Canada through a purpose-built DLT program, integrating a securities ledger, a cash ledger to support end-to-end market processes. The experiment assessed whether DLT could improve efficiency, reduce settlement risk through atomic settlement, and enhance settlement finality and transaction speed. Project Samara showed that DLT-based issuance and settlement of real financial instruments is technically feasible and can improve data integrity and reduce counterparty and settlement risk. These benefits were partly offset by increased system complexity, governance and liquidity costs, and new operational risks, as well as legal and regulatory frictions stemming from the need to reconcile decentralized ledger designs with existing centralized market roles. Given its narrow shape or scope and experimental design, the findings are preliminary and illustrative, but they provide useful insights for future research and policy decisions, or discussions rather, on tokenization and DLT-based financial market infrastructure. Damn, I really butchered that going over like, oh, not this word, say that word. Not this word, say that word. Right? Man. Oh. Don't worry. Some days the reading is easier. Some days the reading is harder. This is one of those days. But overall, this means, okay, they found some interesting use cases, and there doesn't seem to be a huge push forward, but now they have some basic idea of where it can be used, and maybe we'll get an announcement later on in the future about where this could be implemented. Oh, that's really nice. They include in the authors the people at RBC and TD and EDC and the Bank of Canada. So if you're really interested in crypto and particular CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, these would be the people to check out. And I said there were 3. And the last one here is actually a Reserve Bank of Australia Payment System Board update. Now, a lot of this stuff is not crypto related, but at the very bottom, at the very bottom, there's this Project Acacia findings and a roadmap for future work. I'm like, Project Acacia, huh? The board discussed the findings from Project Acacia, noting the potential benefits to the functioning of the financial system that could be unlocked by the growth of tokenized asset markets. Okay, so it's another token securitization ledger from a central bank. They also acknowledged the barriers to development of tokenized asset markets in Australia, including those that were raised by industry participants during the project. Members expressed their support for an ongoing program of work supported by public-private collaboration that will promote responsible innovation in Australia's wholesale payments and financial and infrastructure. The Project Acacia final report will be published in late April. Okay, so we'll get a pretty big report out of the RBA late April on this Project Acacia. Now, I really didn't know exactly what Project Acacia is, so I went and looked it up. It's been around for quite a while, and I'm like, oh, it's this project, right? I had just forgot about it. Project Acacia has today reached a significant milestone with the number of industry participants. It is a joint initiative between the Reserve Bank of Australia, that's Australia's central bank, and the Digital Finance Cooperative Research Centre. It's a mouthful. This work is also supported by Australian Securities and Investments Commission, the Australian Prudential Regulatory or Regulation Authority, and the Australian Treasury. So pretty much everyone in the government of Australia has one or two people working on this. This project is one of the initiatives highlighted in the government's March 2025 statement on developing an innovative Australian digital asset industry. 24 innovative use cases from a diverse range of organizations, ranging from local fintechs to major banks, have been conditionally selected for this next stage of the project. So this whole bit here is what's going to get reported on, finalized, and expanded on in late April. Oh, look, and there it goes. Proposed settlement assets for the use cases include stablecoins, bank deposit tokens, and pilot wholesale central bank digital currency, CBDC, as well as new ways of using banks' existing exchange settlement accounts at the RBA. I made a post a long time ago about how CBDCs work, and man, it essentially allows big companies to get to work like a bank. It allows a lot of companies, like imagine if Apple could print their own money. That's kind of what a CBDC will enable people to do. It'll enable really large companies to effectively become banks. And they can have Apple money. That's CBDC, effectively. That can be swapped with, I don't know, Amazon money. That's essentially CBDC. Now, the other thing is, how are all these different CBDCs, how can they be exchanged for other CBDCs? Right? The Australian CBDC, which really will probably just be called the digital Aussie dollar. How can that be exchanged with the United States CBDC, or the UK CBDC, or the Canadian CBDC, right? So now, you're not just trading the currency itself. Now you're trading this other thing. But maybe some countries make CBDCs only a domestic financial product. So, you know, if a company is in, let's say, Australia, but they want to be paid in something else, or they want to exit from CBDC to another currency, that whole pipeline has to get worked out. So we're still a long ways away before any of this shit like really actually matters to most people in the world. But it's coming, and they've been doing research on this stuff for close to a decade now. A lot of these programs have been going on for a long time, especially in China and the United States. And then Chamath Palihapitiya, I think I butchered the last name, but Chamath, right? Did a whole article going over equity tokenization and how that's expected to work and how it currently works, and some of the pitfalls that people fall into as far as scams related to this asset go. I was just thinking this was pretty interesting to find. Deep dive PDF below. Pay me. It's just a nice cover. Nice coverage of it. Okay. Holy smokes. It's been an hour, 20 minutes of just going over news. Whew. Man. Can I go over some more charts now? Please. All right, let's do week ahead and month ahead trade plans. How about that? Let's do week ahead and month ahead trade plans. What assets to do? What assets to do? I mean, we can just go down the list and go with equities, currencies, commodities, bonds, and then crypto. I think that's good enough. So the S&P going down a bit lower here into the close. Not so great. Not so great. Let's go ahead and throw up the ranges. So what is it? Past 66, call it 30. I'd be concerned about some incredibly volatile moves lower. Like going past this low over here in November. So to potentially go below 6,500, I need to go below 66.30 first to be like really concerned. And I mean like closing below that spot, because we could very easily end up just making a low here sometime next week and then rebounding. And around here is 66.90. We can go ahead and look at the weekly ranges for the week ahead. Check that out. Right there at the top, right there at the bottom. This is insanely volatile. And oh, check that out. 66.30 is rightfully around here. This is 66.40. 66, yeah. So just above 66.30, we have a peak in our distribution here. Let's look at the ranges. Oh, I also got to silence the notifications. And go to a 12-hour chart to load probability pivots. There we go. So we got pushed down due to geopolitical issues today, so we did not go up to these odds here. That is totally expected for a more bearish week. Are we going to end up getting the top below central pivot? I mean, look, next week is kind of the make or break week. Either the Strait of Hormuz has to start getting ships to go through. Like the first few ships have to start going through the Strait of Hormuz next week. Otherwise, we are absolutely going lower. And the leader of Qatar is gonna end up more likely right than not. Stop that. The lighting changed in the room, so it's causing issues. Stop that. Stop it. So annoying. Anyways. Yeah. He said oil going up to 150 is in the cards if things don't get resolved in 2 to 3 weeks. Well, I'm saying if shit doesn't get resolved pretty much by next week. If ships don't start going through the strait next week. And insurance I mean, it seems like the insurance thing is probably going to be settled this weekend, hopefully. Ships will hopefully start to get to go through. But if there's no ships going through by, like, I don't know, Tuesday or Wednesday next week, yeah, it's going to be a lot harder to justify any kind of rebound. Things aren't going to get better next week, because even if in the following week the ships come back online, more production will have to be actually shut off if oil production next week continues without shipping containers coming in and out to actually pick up the nat gas and the oil. So production will have to shut down if the container ships don't go through, if the VLCCs can't go through. I mean, a lot of this is still really up in the air. We can look. Oh wow, and that's just terrible. This is saying, hey, just pick a number, right? Like most of the time, your lows are going to be in this area right here, but where the low actually ends up in this whole range, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, if I'm looking here at the ranges, same spot, right? I'm looking at this spot right here, and that lines up with the if that lines up with the probability weighted pivot for next week, right around here. So if I had to guess, just based off the indicators, my nominal expectation would be here. That's what I'd go for. Okay. We can go down. This is Japan. Euro. You're the Euro 50. Oof. That's not great. We got a bit of a peak right here. And I'd be concerned if nat gas is not... If Europe can't figure out this oil thing, and actually, you know what? If, for whatever reason, Zelensky can allow Orban to get the oil through the pipeline to Europe, somehow that gets figured out over the weekend, then you could easily see this bounce based off that oil going to Europe. That's my assumption. That's what I think Orban wants to do with that oil. Send it to Europe, not to Russia. And if that's the case, this could be the low. But that would need to get resolved over the weekend, and I have no clue about that expectation, whether or not that's reasonable or not. So if containers are actually able to go through Strait of Hormuz next week, I'd expect this to go higher. If not, I'd expect oil to go higher and then this to go lower. And as far as oil goes, when oil is going higher, it's moving yields higher. So this is the bond price. And right now, US bonds are actually at a peak in the ranges here. So a lot of lows for the month are typically found here. But again, if things aren't resolved next week at the Strait, then we're going to probably end up, we can definitely end up much lower. Definitely end up much lower. New Zealand yields have popped. Pound yield, UK yields have popped. European yields, oh wow, they also hit a peak here in the ranges. U.S. yields, it's exactly the opposite of ZB. This is just the yield. Those were the prices. Also hit a peak in the ranges. I mean, it, again, going past, I don't know, like 425. Can set up an alert there. Going past 425, I'd be concerned about like 4.5. And you can actually see a peak appear in the ranges for where a lot of tail risk hits occur. So I would be genuinely concerned. Genuinely concerned if things aren't improved next week supply-wise, energy supply-wise. That a lot of these assets are going to move fast, hard, and hurt a lot of countries and their economic outlook. Like going into the second half of this year. It'll be from now probably into the second half. Because when you have these big spikes and you have all this production getting shut off, it then needs to be turned back on, and it doesn't get turned back on as fast as it gets shut off. It's bad. This can drag on if it's not, if at least the energy side of this conflict is not resolved. And don't worry about being like, we're started getting into the charts now. It's been an hour of going through even more news. Oh man. There's been some stuff with Orban. There's been some stuff about, say, essentially it's like, oh man, if shit isn't resolved in the next week as far as energy security goes in Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, if it's not resolved in the next week, then now what we're doing is we're looking at a bunch of assets and saying, okay, which ones are going to go off to infinity and beyond, like fucking Buzz Lightyear? Because it's not so easy to turn production back on. It's not so easy to turn production back on as it is to turn it off. It's not going to be so easy. So these are U.S. bond yields. This probably, if everything goes as planned and it's so easy, then this probably will be the top for U.S. bond yields, which is a good indicator for oil because U.S. bonds have been moving based off of oil. And actually, if we go to oil now, oil is just, you can see it's in the tail of the distribution. It's just off. It's just up and away. This is going off and doing its own thing at this point. I mean, you can try and use something like quarterly ranges, but even then, it's just, it's in the tail of the distribution. It is far as hell. This is not really quote unquote tradable. You have to go to smaller and smaller and smaller chart time frames. And even then, like today's move was way off. Like what percentile? What percentile is this? Is up here, this is the 99. This is where the 99% probability is. So this is, the current price is, yeah, so 91% of the time price closes, the top for the day, a given trading day, is below the current price relative to the open here. Like this is the tail of the distribution. You are not trading this easily unless you've just gone long in the direction of the tail. And that is a viable strategy. And the way to do that is very simple. You just literally go long here. So you just go long right there at the tail. So most of the time, you're taking longs and shorts at these red and green areas where the probabilities are highest. But if you are expecting these huge geopolitical movements, a not unreasonable strategy is to expect the tail to occur and just to trade in that direction. The same thing actually applies to those higher time frames with the ranges. You go to weekly ranges, right? And you can see right here, we go up here and we reject. And then we come back up. Here's your cutoff, your threshold. And you can even see people selling into that, but just more geopolitical risk came through. Oh, what did I do? What did I do? Oh, it's fine. Yeah. And now it's just up and away. And a lot of tail risk events do happen like this going into end of week. I'm just kind of baffled that it's moved this much just in the last 24 hours. But then again, it's rational to have that expectation because Kuwait did shut down more of their oil production today. So we're look like how many words should I use to describe this is fucking bad? How many words do I need to describe this is not a good thing? Like, that's not good. Let's go look at these other assets here. What's particularly stuck out to me is that some of these currencies are seeing really strong yield spreads against the United States. And yield spreads are a leading indicator of FX prices in a lot of situations. You can actually see green here, red on the sideways, green here. Now we're getting really strong yield spreads. I'm gonna make this a tad small. And if we go down the list here, New Zealand, not the best yield spreads. The Great British Pound has really strong yield spreads right now. I think they're gonna pop off here if the energy security situation gets handled. And arguably same thing with Europe. Europe is in not as great of a situation, but everything still looks okay on the yield spread front. And unless there's some terrible news that happens sometime over the weekend when markets are closed, or maybe there's some really great news that happens over the weekend. We don't really know yet what's going to happen. Everything is still incredibly volatile. But this really can go either way. And I'm on the side that things are going to resolve adequately because so many companies and so many countries are relying on this problem getting resolved next week. Like, there is no arguing about it. The Iranians are sending still a ton of drones. And those drones need to be shut down. I know that the French are actually sending some ships into the Persian Gulf, into the Strait, that are anti-air based ships. I know that the French are doing that. But look, until effectively the US says, hey, we've destroyed even, and the Israelis say we've destroyed even more weapon production facilities in Iran, so then they can't build more drones. essentially the number of drone attacks. Right now, there are like 130 a day for the last 3 days. The number of drones launched by Iran needs to go below 100. And if we can see that occur tomorrow, either today, tomorrow, or the day after, before the market opens, and we see anti-air ships come through into the Persian Gulf to help with either escorting or just keeping these attacks at bay, the sooner all these things happen, the more likely we're going to get a rebound. Because if these things don't happen, we're going to end up with a really volatile and rough economy for at least a couple of months, until the production facilities for oil and gas that were shut off are turned back on again. At least there will be a buffer somewhat, because if, let's say, all of the oil and gas storage facilities are topped off and then they have to turn off their production, well, at least they can empty all of those storage facilities into the tankers and make those sales and get the price of oil down, get the price of natural gas down, and fulfill everyone's demands and the needs that they have for oil and that gas. And then during the time while they are offloading all of their supply that's in storage, they can work on reopening the production, restarting the production that they turned off. I think it's actually a fairly reasonable plan. So it's really a function of, can the ships just get there? And there are plenty of contracts being drafted right now for ships to go and pick up oil and gas in areas that are affected by the Iranian attacks. And now it's just a matter of, do these ships have the green light to do it? Or even the yellow light, so that then some of them can try and do it. Let's see here. Aussie, New Zealand. That one's looking great. Oh, wow. Euro, Canadian dollars in an interesting spot on the month. All of the short and intermediate term yields look pretty positive, and then you have this 10, 20, 30 yield spread that are looking pretty negative, but net it's pretty neutral across the board. However, if you look at the ranges, you were at a peak in the distribution. So I wonder if sometime early next week the low for the month on euro dollar actually comes in or not. That would be nice to see. I'm actually gonna set up an alert for, like, I don't know, 20 pips above this 5,700 level. It'll probably sweep 5,700 and then go back up, would be my best guess. That is, again, assuming Europe has their energy situation resolved. The Canadian currency is appreciating right now against the euro. That's why this asset is going down, because the Canadians are very well isolated against the energy security problems in Europe. And Europe is having an energy security problem, right? So this chart going down makes a hell of a lot of sense. So if next week, or as soon as possible, the energy security issue in Europe is resolved, then this thing is going to, like, this thing's going to bounce hard. This thing could bounce a couple hundred pips. Or end up green on the month, which would be, this might end up being the best trade for the month if there's a recovery next week. This might. 440 pips just for something really conservative. This could end up being the best trade next month if there's an actual recovery. I'll keep this on my watch list. I'll keep an eye on this for next week. And we are doing month ahead trade plans here. Usually I'm just looking at week ahead trade plans. Like, oh, what do the ranges and the probability pivots and the seasonal forecasts indicator say for the next week here. And look, this is super compressed pivots. Not a whole lot of great information. Nice bullish seasonal odds here going into the middle of March on this asset. But again, when you're using seasonal data, you have to have seasonal expectations. And right now, things are not fucking seasonal. When you're having major geopolitical risks around the world, and the U.S. dropping bombs on Iran, creating an crisis practically in Europe, it's not great. Okay. We can go ahead and check out. I don't know. Let's see here. What else can we check out? I mean, there's dollar yen. Dollar yen's just doing a whole lot sideways. It's just been going up and to the right since the Japanese banking holiday happened. This has been going up and to the right. And Takaishi is going to meet Trump shortly. Not next week, but the week after. Trump is going to be meeting Takaishi in 2 weeks. So we're going to keep an eye open for that. And I wonder if they're going to try and not intervene or bring the currency pair down going into the meeting. Because imagine if the BOJ asks the Ministry of Finance in Japan to intervene and send the dollar yen lower before the meeting with Trump. How awkward that's gonna make the meeting. Well, it's gonna make Trump. The meeting will be just fine. The meeting will be just fine, but it's gonna be a sore spot in the meeting. That's for sure. Oh man, what's that? What pound? Pound's up 117 pips. Man, they're doing. All the yields are doing really, really well. CAD yen is doing freaking amazing. All of these yen pairs, except for euro and New Zealand and arguably Aussie, but pound. Yeah, pound's been doing all right, but CAD has been the real winner here. CAD has been the real winner. CAD has been the big outperformer here as people go to the Canadian dollar for security, actually, for energy security. Okay. I got to remember that next time that there's a crisis in the Middle East, and when the crisis materializes, that if to get exposure to anything, probably get exposure to the Canadian dollar. Okay. This crude oil is probably still going to go up and to the right until things resolve. Now, again, if something happens over the weekend or ships start going through the strait in the early days of next week, this thing can very, very, very easily come down just as quickly as it's gone up. And that's just a whole volatility headache. But I'm pretty certain that people who've been long and have stayed long so far are going to be very, very happy. But they are going to stay on their tippy toes reading the news next week, watching if ships are able to actually go through the strait or not next week. And then we have gold. No major changes. A lot of forecasts still for much, much higher gold. Like gold at 6,000. And I'm not going to knock gold here. I expect gold to go higher just based off of more fundamental aspects for the US dollar outlook over the next 2 years. Gold is going to be just fine. I mean, there's silver too. Silver also is going to be just fine. Silver's going to be in the same bucket. And then we already went over all the bonds, and then we have some of the crypto stuff. Bitcoin just holding up. Litecoin holding up. Not much has changed. Not much is changing. ADA's back at these lows again, but you know, other than that, it looks like the thing that moved the least so far has been XMR. All is down 4.6. ETH is down 4.4% on the day. Wow. Damn. Bitcoin's down 3.8%. So there's been a bit of a reversal, but my expectation for a lot of crypto is sideways movements, especially for Bitcoin. It's mostly sideways expectations at the moment. I would like to see Bitcoin get to maybe the high end of the 70K mark, the upper half of the 70 handle. But really, at this point, it's a time related thing. There's too much going on with supply of hardware that's impacting crypto miners right now. And with the cost of energy now at risk of going even higher, it's going to put even more pressure on a lot of miners who were already really holding on tight to stay in business. So we could see things continue going. Again, my major expectation is things effectively go sideways until there's some kind of capitulation from miners that aren't making that much money or can't actually borrow any money to stay in business or get the best and latest hardware to stay competitive with other miners. So I'm not expecting 100,000 in like 2 months or anything. It's best to have I am expecting more modest expectations for Bitcoin returns over the short while here. I don't have any huge expectations for massive returns anytime in the immediate future. But Bitcoin is effectively an infinite money glitch if you understand how it works economically. Alrighty. That's pretty much everything I wanted to say and go over. I know the first hour is always all this macroeconomic, geopolitics stuff, but if you don't do that part, it's hard to actually understand why things move on the chart or to prepare for moves that have yet to occur on the chart. So I'm always going to stay on top of that information and always have a chart open on the side in case I want to go and get the prices. But I like this view of, oh, let's go ahead and review all of our geopolitical analysis, all of this macro analysis, and then let's go and look at our charts separately, because the way I do at least a lot of my analysis is to do that stuff separately. Because a lot of the tools and the decisions you use to make decisions on geopolitical events are not the same tools that you should be using for setting price expectations with indicators and whatnot. Alrighty. I am ready to work on some more outlooks, to work on some more notes, and to get it done as soon as possible to relax and enjoy my Friday, enjoy the weekend, and keep my phone's notifications on in case some bullshit happens with Iran. Okay. I will thank you guys very much for watching. I've been your boss, Joe Boss, and I will see you guys in a bit in the Discord and in the next